Hello and welcome to Season 5, Episode 4 of the Voiro podcast. Very excited to have Abash Sinha with me today. Abash is our enterprise sales lead at Voiro and is also traveling with me to Singapore this coming week to attend the famous ATS conference. Abash, how are you? Good morning.
Hello. Hi, good morning.
Good morning. How was your trip to Delhi yesterday?
I think doing Delhi at a one-day sprint, which is go in the morning, come back in the night. It's
I
painful.
cannot do day trips to Delhi.
Yeah.
But well, you're back here and then you're about to board another flight with me to head over to Singapore. So are you excited to head to
I'm
ATS?
very excited. I've heard so many stories of your chicken and rice
Yeah, of
from
course.
Anand and Gaurav.
I was told that you have not been to Singapore before.
No, this is my first one. So
So what are you,
I'm excited
having
for
not
that.
been to Singapore before, other than chicken rice, what are you most looking forward to?
I have a couple of friends there, so I'm actually looking forward to meeting them because I haven't seen them since school.
Always.
So it's always a plus point when you keep traveling to something like this.
Of course.
Apart from that, I know you gave me hate for this, but I really want to see the Singapore airport. Like, what is the hype about?
It's a good airport. It's a good airport. I must qualify why I said it. It's a good airport, but it's one of those things I'm happy to experience going in and out, but you want to visit the airport. I have no interest in visiting.
Yeah, I mean, we're landing super early, right? Like we are landing super early, and we're gonna have so much time to kill during the first half. I was like, might as well just chill at the airport because I heard like there is everything there. So
it is by far one of my favorite airports in the world. But I'm excited for you to see Singapore because your jaw will just drop. It is one of those extraordinarily well designed and highly functional city. It's beautiful. It's so easy to get around. Public transport is as ideal as it needs to be. It's going to be fun. You're going to be amazed at how everything just works, and it's so well planned as a city. Just extraordinarily efficient. Like from the minute you get off the plane, very quickly you can get out, get a cab, go into the city. There's literally no bottleneck. It's great. It's fun. So we're going to have a fun time. And of course, the food scene is outstanding in Singapore. Like one of the things I've always enjoyed about Singapore is because it's so easy to get around. You can try so many things. And I like Asian food in general, but the quality of what you get in Singapore is great. Let's talk about ATS for a second. But before that, are you good at conferences?
So like if you look, this is my second international event. First one was CapSat. We went there, Dubai. It was mind blown, amazing. And since then, I think I've gone to a couple more. So if you had asked me this question at the beginning of the year, I would have been like, I'm not so sure. But now I'm like, hands down, I got this. I know what's supposed to be done. So I'm like, this is going to be as usual. I'm going to go there, meet some people. It's going to be fun. Yeah.
I like conferences, but I always feel like it takes me a couple of hours to warm up.
For sure.
I'm not one of those people who can immediately like jump out from behind a pillar and like ambush somebody. I'm a little too polite and I wait. But once I get going, I feel like I always have a good time. And unlike what I've heard many people say, which is that, the only reason you go is to network. I actually enjoy like watching panels and sitting through speaker events. And I'm one of those people who like raise my hand and ask a question. So I've always looked forward to ATS, and ATS London has always done a good job of putting up their content on YouTube for everybody to watch. So even though we've never attended any of the ATS events in the past, I have always gone and watched all of the YouTube videos. And I'm very grateful to them for putting up that content. And so it's going to be a fun event. So what I thought we'd do today is we do this as a two-part podcast, one today and one a week from today when we come back. I want to know 3 things from the agenda that you are looking forward to and tell me why. Okay, why don't you go first and then we'll alternate and let's pick the 3 things that we're looking forward to the most.
Definitely. I think I'll start with one of the panels which are there on day 1, right? This is like one of my skeptical areas of this entire advertising space, which is programmatic OOH. So
out of
OOH. Yeah. So this space, I'm a little skeptical of. Like, as a personal opinion, I'm not very thrilled of this entire space, because when you have to measure the admins, like, the performance and stuff like that, it's a very gray area. Even to go live and stuff like that, it's a very gray area for me. So as a I'm going there just to learn when it comes to this topic. So I don't know about you. What's your opinion on OOH?
I remember a few years ago, there was a stretch of time where I really got into understanding more about the out-of-home space. And all of these issues came up. Like, I spoke to some marketers, I spoke to some friends who work at agencies. And yes, there has always been this debate that, out-of-home, the kind of data that you get is not at par with what you would get from digital. But there is still a lot of money being spent on out-of-home advertising. So clearly that doesn't stop anybody. So my biggest takeaway from that entire exercise, which I did back then, was the fact that out-of-home has a certain power that no other format has. And the marketers who use it well know how to wield that power. So yes, while the availability, transparency, and ease of getting data out from a campaign is not at par with other mediums, it has a level of impact that nobody else can. And all you have to do is walk through Times Square to realize that out-of-home is very much real. And so I'm excited about this session. I'm curious to know what advancements have come about in the world of measurement, what capabilities are available today. I mean, my brain has not imagined this enough. So I have only thought about static out-of-home and now digital out-of-home, but I'm curious to know where it's going.
Because
but I'm excited about it.
Yeah, but I have an opinion. At least it could work where infrastructure is built out so well, right? Like in countries like Singapore, Dubai, and New York, and the rest of the world, where infrastructure is so laid out. But I want to look at it when it's back home with us here. We've seen companies grow a lot more now in the DOH space. The entire play of it being on programmatic and running through those pipes of an SSP and DSP and stuff like that. And it comes up with its own unique challenges. And at least in India, I feel we are like, there is a lot of steps for us to get somewhere. So I'm hoping to see if there's something new that's come up. So that's one conversation that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah.
What about you?
So let me segue to my first choice of exciting session, which is on day one. There's a session that Ciaran O'Kane is, I think, moderating, and it's called The Death of Blackbox Advertising and What Audience Targeting Will Look Like from Here Onwards.
What is Blackbox?
So what they're effectively alluding to is trust and transparency have gotten really high on a marketer's list of priorities. And so what does modern audience targeting look like in the face of this, given the fact that historically there has been a lot of money spent on algorithms that are basically black boxes. If you read the ANA report from a couple of months ago, they talked about MFA websites. They talked about the fact that campaigns run on average across 40,000 different websites. So modern audience targeting is obviously going to seek more control and solve this problem of helping advertisers and marketers trust where their money is going and find transparency, right? So the reason I think it's a nice segue is also because I've always wondered what audience targeting is like in the world of out-of-home. And it's obviously not a perfect science, right?
It's not. Yeah.
You're obviously, this is not some dystopian world where you are using a camera and seeing who's in front of the billboard and then changing the ad. So all of the programmatic enhancements are more around making it dynamic and being able to maximize the utilization of that billboard as opposed to painting something static and keeping it there. However, I have been thinking for some time now, and I was on a panel recently where someone said, I forget the words that the gentleman used, but something to the effect of the future of audience targeting is going to move closer to context and away from overly sophisticated, computationally heavy algorithms that are not good either for the campaign or for the environment. And so I am very sure that in this, they will touch upon two things that are of deep interest to me. One is the return to direct sold inventory and finding a better place in the marketer stack, which, as you know, is very close to what we do at Voiro and what we support. Ours is a product for direct sold inventory in OTT and e-commerce. And 2 is the rise of contextual advertising and improvements in the world. So what I'm looking for and what I expect to see in this session is a focus on these 2 things: the rise of contextual as a new mode of efficient targeting, and the return to direct sold. So that's what I believe.
Anand, I do want to ask you a question though. With this entire cookies going away and stuff like that, and we've had conversations inside the office, right, where Anil's like, I don't mind cookies. Like, there has to be like cookies. It makes sense. I would mind that because I get like very specific ads which actually make sense to me, and it works.
Yeah.
Right. And contextual, it's not going to be that, right? You're still going to get irrelevant ads because who understands context? Like, context is still subjective on that front. Yeah. So what's your opinion? Like, what do you think? Are you going to miss the cookies sort of an advertising play? Because the targeting is great.
I have a slightly different take on that. So look, the writing is on the wall, right? That cookies are going to go away. While we don't mind them, or third-party cookies were not invented for this purpose and effectively found a purpose that it was very useful for. While I didn't mind it, I don't mind being cookied and then being shown a halfway relevant ad because of what's in that cookie. I definitely believe that the death of the third-party cookie is around the corner. There was a point in time where no one believed it, and then they said, Google's going to keep postponing it. But it looks like it's happening. But what I do believe is, on the other side of it, is not going to be one single identity provider or measurement. There's not going to be a single winner on the other side, which is why I believe it offers room for the rise of both contextual and direct sold inventory. Because if there's no one who's just going to come in and replace it and be the new standard, then it's going to be fragmented. And if it's going to be fragmented, then these are the 2 things that I think will take some portion of its place, not all.
Yeah. And like, you're talking of an industry which is already quite fragmented. So it's quite interesting. How do you navigate around it?
Yeah. What's your second pick?
Second,
I feel like this is like an NBA All-Star draft.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, the second one, I'm going to jump right in. This one is something I personally believe. I know you guys are we've had multiple debates of, picking CTV, it's the next big thing and stuff that, but I'm of the opinion that retail advertising is the next big thing, not CTV, because I feel that has more, space of growth. So there is a session on the 4th, on the next day of the event, which is called Delivering on the Retail Media Promise. And if you read the description of the event, it says that it's time we had an honest conversation about the extent of the opportunity in this ecosystem. And you see that description and you're like, okay, and there is like the kind of people who are there on that panel are the knows who, like they know inside out more than I would on this entire industry. And that's something that I'm very excited to see, because this entire, we read recently an article from sorry, I forgot the publication's name, but Insider Intelligence. Yes. So they posted an article and they mentioned that retail companies must now start thinking like media companies, right? Because their entire game is changing. And the way, if you have to move to the programmatic space and start, because if you think of it, what they're actually trying to get at is that if I'm a seller and if I'm on Flipkart, Myntra, and any other e-commerce of Tata Click, Purple, anywhere of it, if I'm selling on all these platforms, then I cannot be working with a direct team here, a self-serve portal somewhere else, and a different mechanism altogether somewhere else, right? It makes sense for me to have a system where, like, I'm able to take my product across these platforms and run ads in terms of product listings across it. And that's the future that everyone is trying to get at, because that's the next big thing. Because as a seller, it makes great sense. And why it works in retail is because you can actually measure it, right? because the measurements are so laid out and so much better than any other ecosystem you'll see out there. So this is something I'm very excited about. And I think Kevil has a lot of plans in this segment as well, because I think they're trying to build this network, because this entire ad network for retail is something is non-existent right now. And I think that's bigger than CTV. It's my personal opinion. What do you think, Anand?
I'm looking through this session. It looks really exciting. Who do you have on the panel? You have GroupM, Colleen from GroupM, Joanna Burton. I think you have a very interesting set of folks on the panel. I agree. I was doing some digging the other day, and it looks like the global e-commerce industry in sales is expected to cross $5.8 trillion this year. And everyone knows Amazon's numbers when it comes to how much they make from ads and what they are projected to hit in the next few years, right? It's about 40 billion, expected to go to 70 billion in the next couple of years. I'm excited to hear from some folks who are in the thick of it, and hear from them about where this is going. Like I mentioned on the last podcast, I'm very excited about the Instacart IPO last week, and specifically what came out of the S1 filing and the way it was analyzed, which is they're not just a grocery delivery business, they are an ad tech business. And I think, we spoke to Anirudh the other day from Swiggy, and he was talking about how the future of retail is so bright. And it makes sense, right? Users are here to buy things. How often do you open Swiggy to browse, right? You open Swiggy to buy something. How often you open Swiggy or opened Flipkart and not made a purchase? It's probably lower than the number of times you've actually made a purchase. And that's because users are inherently transactional, right? You're either here to check on a price or to make a purchase, and marketers love it. You're at the point of purchase. It's if they can influence you at that point, there's a shortcut to you changing your mind or making a decision. And if you go back to our conversations with both Lava Kumar and Varada, when we talked about attention, both of them talked about the fact that a significant portion of our retail decision making is subconscious and happens much before the point of transaction, right? So put those together and it is a gold mine. Two, nobody goes to, or very rarely do you go to a retail platform and just look around, right? First thing you're probably going to do is search. So it's not just that you're there to be transactional. You are there and giving them your intent. And on the back of that, they know what you're looking for. They know what related products are like. They know what your past history has been like. They know your past history of purchases, your past history of browsing. It's more than enough to have a really, 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 really relevant conversation with you through ads. And lastly, of course, every merchant is an advertiser. Every advertiser is a merchant. So I love retail media. I think it's going to take a few very exciting twists and turns over the next few years. And I'm curious to know what this panel says.
I'll tell you what, if you speaking of attention, right? Like you mentioned attention, and I think if you think attention, for me, it's TikTok. Like what it's doing today in terms of enabling, because it has attention, because you could take your phone and just like how you behave with YouTube shorts and Instagram reels, you're on TikTok, then you're probably there. Yeah, you're there for a long time.
TikTok would have been the bane of my existence.
Yeah,
if it was here.
So if you see in the US now with that entire shopping experience that they've unlocked there, and they're challenging even a giant like Amazon in that space. So I'm just because you can see that if retail media, those companies, when the statement has been said that retail companies must now start thinking like media companies, because media companies are moving towards becoming the retail space as well, enabling conversions and stuff like that. So it's a very, I'm very excited about this. It's going to be awesome.
Let me jump to my second pick, which is very close to something we touched upon. Day one, there is a session called Attention as a Measurement Currency. And we've had 2 episodes on the Voiro podcast in the recent past where we have touched upon it, where we have broken down attention and how it's how it's measured. There are two technologies that we've sort of gone into, and we've talked about both the technologies to measure attention, as well as we've spoken to Varda from Big Basket, who told us a little bit more about how it's applied in the world of retail media. And in fact, when we left off with Lava Kumar, the question we asked is, at some point, do you see attention as a viable currency against which ads can be bought? And he said, absolutely, yes. So the question that we've asked him on that episode is basically the topic of this session. And so obviously, I'm excited about it because it will get into it a little bit. So even if you look at the description, they talk about how attention metrics have risen to the top of the shortlist as a viable alternative to measurement tools, given the deprecation of third-party cookies. Check. But they specifically say, what does it entail? How do you buy it? How do you optimize against it? How do you ensure that publishers are set up to make the most of it, right? At some point, there's going to be an inertia to say, move away. There's a metric that we touched upon on that episode, which was called attention per impression. So in the funnel of metrics, if you're saying there are impressions and there are viewable impressions, and effectively now there are impressions and there is a percentage of those impressions that is basically qualified as having garnered attention. So I would love to know more about that metric. It's one thing I'm looking forward to. I like that Ciaran from ExchangeWire is on this panel because in his role in first party capital, he has driven the investment into Lumen, which is one of the technologies that's used to measure attention. So 1,000 reasons to look forward to this session.
So Anand, like if you notice on that day, there is also a session named Go Beyond Video, why in-game advertising grabs more of users' attention.
Yeah.
So like if you start layering that as to which platform is the one that is actually can give you a platform where people are actually giving the platform attention. Like retail, if you're buying something, you're actually going through the product listing because you want to find your product. So if you put an ad there, that's an attention metric, right? That makes sense. Like it will work so well. And whereas if you're watching a video, then my attention, I'm a little, because all of us know if there's a cricket match, if the over is done, we're going to the fridge to get something, or we are probably on a phone or something like that. So, very well said. I think this attention metrics is very much needed, and it's going to be interesting as to what we define that to be. Yeah.
Did you know that the root word for advertising comes from a Latin word, which is basically a word that means attention? The literal meaning of the word is to turn the mind towards, but that basically means to get someone's attention. So I think it's pretty cool. Full circle. Cool. So what's your third pick?
Third is something, to be honest, I mean, you go to these events, right? And I will not be surprised that if the word AI is being used in every panel and is being used in every conversation. So there is a panel discussion on AI as well. And I'm just, I think you remember we had this small event here, and Pravir had... we had this symposium for CTV, and he made sure that in his panel that he did not say the word CTV. I would love that if someone there at the event can talk about the entire scope of machine learning and the entire benefits of that without using the words AI. And I think that'll be very refreshing for me in that sense. What do you think?
So this is on day 2, right? Let me see.
Yeah,
it says the rise of conversational AI. Yeah, I like the fact that they've called out conversational AI because machine learning is not new to our industry. Across the bitstream, across the ad tech stack, there are so many places where either machine learning or deep learning or neural networks or AI are already in heavy use. We were at the AWS symposium a while ago about generative AI and blown away by how much technology is being built that is now so easy to access. I don't know if you saw ChatGPT's updates this week, but it is again mind-blowing. It can read images. So 2 big updates this week in the world of ChatGPT. One is that it can read images.
Yes.
And two is that it is now connected to the open internet. It's not restricted to 2021 or whatever. So that kills anyone who was trying to basically build agents to bridge that gap. Bard, if I'm not mistaken, was connected to the live internet, and that was one of the differentiators for Bard over OpenAI or GPT 3.5 or GPT 4. But a lot of updates, and AWS put down a $400 million, if I'm not mistaken. It put on a significant investment in Anthropic. And Anthropic has their own LLM called Claude, which is something that we've been looking into. And so obviously a lot of development. So while AI, this industry is no stranger to AI or machine learning, I'm curious to know how conversational AI or generative AI is going to play a role. Obviously, one of the biggest use cases is in creative management, creative generation, stable diffusion models. But conversational AI, natural language processing, I'm curious to know what the application is. We have touched upon this many times in the last season. We've debated and said, what do you think is the biggest use case? What do I think is the biggest use case? And we've always somehow circled around and landed on creatives. But natural language processing might actually be different if we can wrap our heads around GPT 6 or 7 or 8 or whatever is the closest to AGI and say, how does that impact our industry? I suspect we might have to gaze into a crystal ball a little bit more, but that's what they're going to do for us.
But Anand, I'll tell you what. Like, I think you and I have seen the ad pods, one of the podcasts that they did about AI in digital marketing, and it was, if I'm not wrong, it was Avinash Kaushik, and he did a beautiful job in that entire podcast. I strongly recommend anyone who's not heard it to go ahead and check them out. But he basically, in the entire broadcast, he just mentioned the purpose framework for AI, where he said you use it as a tool, as a co-pilot, or as a muse. So the way he bucketed these three, whether you use AI as a tool, AI as a co-pilot, or AI as a muse, that's very fascinating to me, because in that, if you bucket that, and if you look at any application, be it us, the way we are building our product, be it any other, be it AWS looking at opening up services for anybody else or any other company, I think this framework, this purpose framework, is quite interesting, right? It opens up your and gives you direction as to what you're looking at AI for specifically.
Yeah.
So that's neat.
Cool. Well, so let me give you my third.
Yeah.
My third pick, but my third pick is not my final pick because I want to cheat and have 4 picks. So the third one is on day 2. It's a session called Publishers Building Sustainable Mixed Revenue Model Businesses. We remove all the technology hats and wear a business hat. The last 2 years have been brutal for the streaming industry that was trying to grow at all costs. And I remember 3 years ago, maybe more, we were talking about in our team, in our chat groups at Voiro, we were talking about a video that was published by Andreessen Horowitz, which talked about the fact that advertising as a standalone model has certain drawbacks, and the future is going to be mixed revenue models. And I think at the time they were talking about a lot of apps in China that have really cracked microtransactions and the intersection of AVOD, SVOD, and TVOD. Examples included apps where you could read an ebook, but you could pay per chapter, or you're not subscribing to Netflix and you're not only ad supported, but you pay per episode. And the fact that payment infrastructure is today far more advanced than it has ever been, it gives you so many more abilities, right? I've always believed that mixed models are the way to go. To go back to your earlier example or your question to me around third-party cookies and whether or not I mind it, the reason I said I have a different take and I forgot to get to it is the fact that most of the apps I use, I pay for a premium account. I hate advertising. I hate being bothered by it, despite working in this industry. But I like the fact that Spotify has an ad-supported tier and a subscribe tier. YouTube has an ad-supported tier and a premium tier. Netflix has so many tiers now, including mobile-only in India for a cheaper price. And I love mixed revenue models. I think it is absolutely the way to go. I also, and we talked about this 2 weeks ago, I like what the New York Times is doing, where you have to subscribe, but you will still see ads at a very low ad load or low ad density, which is respectful of your user experience, but helps them bridge that gap where only subscriptions will not work and only advertising will not work. It helps them bridge that.
And they look pretty.
I think there are thousands of ways to have a mixed revenue model, but the companies who are able to crack it are the ones that really, really thrive. And so I'm curious to know more about some examples that these guys. It's a cool panel. CNN, South China Morning Post, BBC News, Vogue, and ExchangeWire. It's got 5 people who are probably the best folks on the planet to talk about this. So I like it.
By the way, Anand, speaking of sustainability, did you watch Apple's latest sustainability report? Instead of doing a boring report, they made a kick-ass video. You got to watch it.
Oh yeah, that one with Tim Cook.
Yeah, it's so much fun. Like I wish every company came up with that kind of a little more creative way of showing how, because it was so concise, right? They mentioned their facts, stuff that they've done to get closer to that kind of a space. And I think, that's a great way to show how you're so thing. That's amazing.
My secret option 4, my secret pick is Raj Parekh, who's the head of digital sales at MediaCorp. I remember him from a panel he did last year at ATS Singapore, where he was on with Gurman from MIQ and Lindsay Roundtree from ExchangeWire. It was a really, really nice panel. And so he's back and he's presenting a case study around something that MediaCorp did with the Temasek Foundation. And he posted about it on LinkedIn, where he said it's a captivating case study that demonstrates results and metrics, but also addresses important issues around mental health. ATS London this year had a very strong focus on mental health because of the fact that ours is an industry, and you know this, you've been on the tech side, you've been on the agency side, where life can get stressful in the world of advertising. And there has to be, if you're talking about sustainability, which many events in our industry you're focusing on sustainability, on decarbonization, on measuring the impact of our work. I don't think those conversations are possible without a focus on mental health. So I think it's going to be fun to listen to what they have done with the Temasek Foundation.
And I think it's quite cool, right? Like what they're doing, because finally you see among all these events now, they're starting to focus on stuff like this. It's just like, yay, like small wins. We're getting there. So it's good.
No, absolutely. I mean, at least it starts to normalize it in the conversation and in the airways of our industry, and it will definitely trickle down. So Raj Parekh, we are coming. We're excited to listen to your session.
And we hope to catch you right after.
Okay, so that's that. What we have to do next Friday is look back at these sessions and also see if there's any other session that excited us. We will, of course, attend everything and the networking event. I'm happy that we didn't say we're looking forward to the networking drink session, because obviously we're going to be there for it, but these are some fun sessions. So it's a good looking agenda, and let's have some fun. And I'm curious to know what you think about Singapore. When you have to take 5 minutes in the next podcast and just talk about your impressions of Singapore.
So I think we're there for 3 days. So I'm going to make the most of them for sure. And including your crazy task of getting up early morning and going for a run. So
you cannot go to Singapore and not go for a run in the morning. So I'll make sure I take you.
I'm looking forward. It's going to be awesome.
Okay. Thank you, Abash. Thank you, Leena, Santosh, and Gautam, as always. And looking forward to ATS. And thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.